Well, good evening. My name is Brian Hearn. I'm the film curator here at the Museum of Art, and I'm a feature film programmer for deadCENTER. And we're very proud to have, first of all, Mr. Wes Studi in the house tonight, Oklahoma Icon Award recipient. Of course, Mr. Studi, his work precedes him. And I'm also really proud that all of our panelists tonight are Native Oklahomans. We can talk about what Native American means, but that's special. And I'm really proud of all these people and their work. It's been a real honor to see Juliana and Sterlin kind of grow up. I've grown up with you in a way and watched your work develop. And Mr. Studi, we've you as well.
What's this elder statesman?
Oh, hey, come on. This is this guy. He's been in some movies, you know, this little one called Avatar, for example. I haven't seen it, but no, I'm kidding. Last of the Mohicans, Dances with Wolves, Geronimo, Heat, my goodness, incredible credits. And you knew LaDonna Harris, and we'll get into that. And you participated in AIM back in the day, and you've lived a lot of history that we've been seeing tonight. But briefly, I did want to tell you guys a bit. You know Juliana's story. If you saw the last screening, you heard a little bit about her journey making this film. 6 years, right? Wow, good for you. That's takes dedication, true dedication. And both of your stories and Sterlin's are very personal stories. Would you say that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Sterlin, of course, I think we've shown all of your films at deadCENTER, which is truly amazing. Going back to Goodnight Irene, which was his first short film, and this is your first feature documentary, correct? And he's been doing great work for This Land Press. I encourage you to go to their website, thislandpress.com. He's been doing some incredible short documentaries. I saw the one with Wes in the hot dog joint. That was pretty fascinating. Go check that out. Who knew Wes has a favorite hot dog? So. Anyway, it's an honor to have this panel here tonight, and we don't have a specific agenda. We just kind of want to talk about, you know, what's going on with Native American cinema, and you people are leading the way in your work, and so let's get into that. Sterlin had some comments about the title of the. He wanted to blow up the title of our panel today, the Native American Cinema panel. So, Sterlin, go. Let's blow it up.
Okay, so I must have been in a bad mood whenever I got the email, but not really. No, I was just basically kind of like, you know, Native cinema is boring. You don't want to hear about that. Let's hear about films. Let's hear about cinema. And, you know, I really just, I think after doing a lot of panels about Native American cinema, after a while, you're kind of like, you feel like a broken record. And at some point, it's like, can I graduate to just talk about films, you know? And I just talked to Wes outside about it, and he was like, we can talk about whatever the fuck we want to talk about. So, so it made me feel better. No, and it really wasn't a big deal. It was just kind of like, you know, I got the email at a specific time in the specific part of the day, and I wrote a specific email back saying, can't we just talk about movies? But that's really what we're doing. I mean, we're all Native, so, you know, you put the suit on, you have to wear it. Is that the saying, or is that wrong? We make films about Native people usually, so it's fair. Let's talk about it.
Well, and I'm curious just to kind of get the conversation going. I mean, so talk more about that. I mean, is there especially in documentary, I mean, do you feel like there's a Native point of view, really? And is that something you guys are aware of, or you're just telling your stories?
I mean, I definitely think there's a Native point of view, and it's a good point of view that hasn't been really, you know, hasn't got the proper exposure that maybe that it should have. You know, and I think that at the same time, we just also just tell our stories, and sometimes, you know, it feels good to just have that acknowledged as well. But you know, it's it's something that I'm proud of. And whenever I first started, I think that I was kind of annoyed by the Native American filmmaker title. But then after a while, you see the filmmakers like Juliana and Wes and different people, and you realize that there are other Native people with common goals that are making their own films, and you sort of take pride in that, I think. So that's pretty much where I'm at.
I agree. I think it's having a Native viewpoint, like Sterlin said, is it's sort of these unheard stories, and we have a perspective that is very unique to where we come from and our communities and our families, and to be able to that's what makes us, I think, unique or special in some ways, that we do have this opportunity to put our voices out in maybe a different way, a different style than we typically see. So it's always I think it's always a good thing. It's a real wonderful opportunity for us.
Yeah, well, I do agree with Sterlin in that we need not pigeonhole ourselves to Native cinema, if you will, because it's a great feeling to be able to step out of Native cinema, if you will, and hop into the larger pot, the larger boiling pot of making film. And I have been lucky enough to have sort of crossed over into what I describe as non-specific roles in films, but I also recognize the fact that almost any Native American actor who is going to give it a shot in LA, New York, any place, his best bet is leathers and feathers. I mean, that's where if you have no other, if you haven't done anything else in filmmaking and you're an actor, that is probably the best chance you're going to have because of your look. I mean, being an actor has so much to do with your initial image and then the fact that you can deliver lines and you can do it well. You can convince people that whoever's lines you're saying are your own truth. And that's the gist of it. The more you work, the more you're able to move into perhaps other roles, and that's really kind of it really is what I strive to do, is to be seen as an actor rather than a Cherokee actor, Native American actor, Indian actor. I would like to be known simply as a good actor, working actor, as a matter of fact.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think that the danger in really, the only danger in having this thing, Native American cinema, is just for the younger people. It's like, don't just strive to be a Native American filmmaker. Don't just strive to be the best Native American filmmaker. Strive to make really good films, no matter where you come from. And so they can be seen, because in the end, it's going to help Native people if your film is good. Not if it's a good Native film. If it's a good film, that's when people are going to see it, and that's when you're going to change things.
Yeah, an internationally accepted film is definitely one of the goals that we Native filmmakers, I think, strive for. Something that's accepted throughout, because stories are simply that, stories that every culture, every ethnic group in the world can appreciate, because they can empathize, they can sympathize, they know what it is you're talking about because they've experienced the same thing. Something that we share as members of mankind. I mean, in world mankind,
Yeah. No, sorry, go ahead. I had a funny story. I showed my film in Venice at the Venice Film Festival, and it was Barking Water, and I was showing that film in Venice, and I was like sitting by the producer Chad Burris, and we were sitting there, and we were totally stressed out because no one laughed. And that's the only way we knew if anyone liked that movie. And if you show that movie to, like I showed it in Toronto with 650 Indians in one theater, and it was like they were watching Dumb and Dumber for the first time. And like, it's a movie about a guy that's dying the whole movie, you know? And so they're laughing the whole time. They got every little small joke and everything that was in there. And in Italy, they were just stone silent. And it's different there where like, you know, here it's like, oh, you show your film, you can leave, you can do whatever. There, they like bring you in a spotlight. Like there's a spotlight, you're in a suit, and they bring you in and everyone stands and sort of quietly claps for you as you go and sit down and take your place amongst them to watch the film. And it was just silent. And like Chad and I were just like elbowing each other, just like, shit, this sucks. Like, they're not laughing, they don't like it, like this is awful. And at the end, we were ready to run out. But at the very end, the lights came up and they gave us a standing ovation and people were crying and all of this stuff. And I realized that, you know, sure, they didn't get the humor, they didn't get all the little, you know, idiosyncrasies in the film, but they got the heart of the story, and they identified with death, and they identified with this love story that's at the center of the film, and it touched them, and they could relate to it, even though they're from Italy, and so that was a lesson that I feel like I learned as well.
Well, preconceived notions is something that we have to overcome, and that reminds me, just a quick story about before I kind of hit working a lot of film, I and my wife put together a, this is more ado, by the way, my wife. Hello. We put together a stage show called Coyote Chews His Own Tail, T-A-L-E, right? And it was a matter of a whole lot of coyote stories, and those of you familiar with coyote stories know they are just nasty, some of them, you know? I mean, they really are. They can be pretty bad. In any case, but the idea that we began using was that we would tie together Coyote's own talking about the world as he sees it, and then a lot of stories to go with it, kind of like Letters from Heaven, like, what's his name did? Twain. Mark Twain. Well, and anyway, what we found at a lot of places that we went to, we would announce that we're putting a show on here, yada yada, in this town, this community, and all of a sudden, the idea is that, okay, this is for kids. It's an Indian guy. This is for kids, and it's going to be about bunnies and turtles and eagles and whistleblowing, eagle whistleblowing, and all of that. That's what it's going to be, and it's probably going to be serious. So that's the deal. What I would see every time I'd walk out on stage to start this show, I'd look out into the audience and I'm here to learn some wisdom. Yeah. You know, kind of a thing. And so I'd start out telling these stories. And I think the worst one was in Santa Fe, and sure enough, a lot of the schools had heard about it, and one teacher had brought in an entire class of elementary age children. And while I really couldn't think of any way to kind of soften the stories up a little bit, but I started out, and by the time I was probably 15 minutes into the story, all of the kids rose up and followed their teacher out of the theater. There were some pretty raunchy stories, some of them. You know. But preconceived notions, you know what I mean? You probably ran into that.
And I mean, and you know, just him speaking of Santa Fe is like another thing. Like whenever I saw the Native American panel about Native cinema, that made me go, oh. And you know, it doesn't happen in Oklahoma as much because everyone here is you either part Indian or you at least like, you know, sleep with an Indian or married to one or whatever. And so, you know, but like going to Santa Fe or somewhere Boulder, you know, like the freaks come out of the woodwork when they hear Indians are talking about something, because they want to know, they want to learn some knowledge. They want you to drop some like ancient wisdom on them, and you know, they come at you and they're talking about their sweat lodge their sweat lodge experience that they just went to, and you know, it's like they paid $3,000 to do it, and like you know, all of this stuff. So there's a lot of baggage that comes with that, Native American filmmakers and, you know, people speaking on a panel with that. So I think that it comes from that too as well, you know. I mean, there's been some
the best
funny
tip
stories.
you can always give them is use salt and pepper.
Lots of salt.
Okay. Well, so I wanted to ask Juliana and Sterlin too. Tell us a little bit about sort of the origin story of your projects that you have here, and how you connected with them, and just what motivated you to be like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm making this film.
Well, for those of you that are just arriving for the panel and for Sterlin's film, I kind of mentioned this in the Q&A after my film, but I was producing Wounded Knee, which was an episode in a 5-part series on PBS on Native American history about the American Indian movement. And I was doing a lot of footage research and came across a lot of footage on LaDonna, and that planted the seed. And finding that she was wildly popular in pop culture, because, you know, at that time, she, you know, it was cool to be Indian for just a brief moment. Little bitty time in the 60s.
Oh, it's back.
It's back now. Now everybody wants to wear a headdress.
It was
Wayne
heaven,
Coyne.
Sterling.
Wayne
It was heaven.
I saw Wayne Coyne hanging out in the parking lot. He'll be here.
So anyways, and so the media was really latching onto her because she was an important woman, and doing the, you know, she didn't have any formal education, or you know, she was just a senator's wife, as they say, and you know, they were just supposed to have tea parties and whatnot, and so seeing all this great footage I was finding in National Archives and also in popular culture, in the media, I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And I didn't know LaDonna, because LaDonna lived, when I was growing up, she lived in DC the whole time. So I only would see her at like funerals. And I knew that she was very important, but I didn't know the extent. And so I just dug in, and then eventually our mutual friend Bird Running Water was really supporting that. He was close with LaDonna, and so I went out to Albuquerque and met with her and spent a week with her to talk about it, and so we started. So that was the seed.
Mine was, you know, it's part of the documentary is about these songs that we have, and really just hearing the songs from a young age, and you know, falling in love with these songs and wanting to share these songs. But the main thing, I think, was to inspire other Muskogee Creek and Seminole people, young people, to learn these songs and sing these songs and keep these songs alive. I think that was the main motivation for why I did it. But I also feel like there's something that I lack, which is the thing in my brain that says don't try something or something. Like, I just go for it. Because whenever we started making this documentary, you know, I pitched it, and as I was pitching it, in my head, I was like, God, I hope it turns out good, you know? And I had no idea what it was gonna be. I knew some things that it was gonna be, but really it was just like, I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna move back home, I'm gonna make this documentary, and I know something beautiful is gonna come out of it. And so that's really what I did, and it was just discovering the story as I was there. And part of that story was this story of the disappearance of my grandfather, because that's basically the other part of what the film's about. And I would film all these people just about the songs, and I'd originally planned on bookending the film with the story of my grandfather wrecking on this bridge in Sasakwa, and they searched for his body for 5 days, and they sang songs as they searched for him. And I was just going to bookend the film with that story. But as I was interviewing these singers, different singers, it would just turn out that they happened to be there and searching for my grandfather. And so I would sometimes have the equipment packed up and put in put in the car ready to leave, and then I'd bring up the fact that it's also about my grandfather that was lost in the river and wrecked off of the bridge, and they would be, oh yeah, I was there searching for him back in 1962. And so I'd pull all the equipment back out and I would interview them about my grandfather. And so it just became this bigger story, and really it was about discovering the story as I was making it, I think.
And Wes, so give us some of your perspective, I mean, in terms of the issues that are covered in Juliana's film. You had a personal relationship with LaDonna, and I don't know if you've seen Sterlin's film, but I'm curious also, just from your perspective, would these films be made, say, at any earlier point in your career? Are these kind of documentaries? Is this a recent phenomenon from your perspective, or are we are we approaching a golden age, hopefully, of native filmmaking?
I hope we're approaching a golden age Let me put it this way first: is that there have been Native American people that have been involved in show business over the years, and while I don't have the names right now, but I mean it's like Native America as a subject matter has been a part of movie making forever. I mean, the very first film ever made, of course, it was on a pueblo out in New Mexico, but. I think that along with LaDonna's work in the legislative ways of changing things in the world, as well as the social unrest of the late 60s and the 70s, definitely had an impact on these youngsters here over the years. And
Whippersnappers.
These whippersnappers here, youngsters, I think it's a direct result of both enterprise, both the AIM movement, the NIYC movement, and all of the work that was done by people working through channels in DC itself, that at this day, there were people also at that time that were working on the show business front. And that's something that a lot of people haven't heard, is that back in the 70s, the late Will Sampson, Muskogee Creek, and Jay Silverheels had put together an organization out in Los Angeles called American Indian Registry for the Performing Arts. And when I went out there in the late 80s, this was a very important organization for me. It no longer exists, and that's a sorrow. But what they were there to do was help with workshops and training, and for any American Indians who were coming out to LA to give acting a shot. And they started this like in the late 70s and into the 80s, and what they did was probably the most important part of their purpose was to help Indians find agents, because you can't do a thing without agents. And when I went out there, you had to have an agent, you had to have a telephone, and you had to have a place to put that telephone. This was before cells, right? I mean, so that was quite a bit. And they had set up this registry. They helped me get an agent. And like I say, there's really, at that time, and still to this day, there's no way of doing business without representation, right? And so so Will and Jay had sort of paved the way for the rest of us coming in. And then, the more that they had worked, and the more that I began to work, and then other Indians began to be seen and recognized in film and in television. Well, the immediate response was, hey, come on out, you guys who are working, come out and encourage your youngsters to get involved. tell your own stories, and you know, the birth of native cinema. It can be a great thing. So I don't know that if I had any influence on Sterlin or Julianne, but hopefully I did. But if I didn't, there were others like Chief Dan George, like I said, Jay, and that who did, and I think that probably we are at the beginning of hopefully a golden age of native cinema, if you will. But again, we should kind of think back to, well, do we really want to start our own native cinema, or do we want to excel in the one that's already established? I mean, I think it would be great to go ahead and excel in the machinery that's already there that distributes film and television programs, media of every kind. I think that's probably our beginning, or a goal that we should shoot for at this point in time. If there's room, if you will, if there's room for quote unquote native cinema, then of course, yes, let it grow. I mean, those who are talented in that venue then of course should go for it, you know?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, growing up watching Wes in films and, you know, up through Smoke Signals and everything, you know, what happened too, perfect timing, was that we're all inspired by this work and it made us see ourselves on screen. But then technology all of a sudden became very, very accessible. And so people from Holdenville, Oklahoma, or wherever could get a camera and could make a film all of a sudden. And so all of these things lining up is what I think, because like without technology being so accessible, I don't know that Indians would be pushing forward, because you know, we live in some of the most remote places in the world. You know, like one of my friends is a filmmaker from Barrow, Alaska. I mean, I don't think you can get more north than Barrow, Alaska, or remote, you know. So all of this kind of all came together at the same time to push it all forward, I believe.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Well, let's open it up to questions or comments from the audience. Sir?
I think 100% it is her family and her community. You know that saying, it takes a village to, what is the saying, right? It takes a village to raise
an egg.
An egg. To raise a Comanche, it takes a village. Literally, it takes a village. And I was raised that same way. I mean, all my aunts and uncles and cousins are here, and they all were taking care of each of us, and it was all, you know, when she explains in the film, she talks about how our cousins, our brothers and sisters, and our aunts and uncles are the ones that discipline us, and our grandparents are typically the ones that raise us. That couldn't be more true. I mean, my mother and father who are here, we're both working and going to school at OU, and we're having a real hard time with two little girls, and so we were raised by my great Aunt Hattie, who's Comanche, and we were all raised by Aunt Hattie. And also my dad's mother, who was white, who she was a farm girl from, you know, central Oklahoma, my granny. And so it was, you know, when you have that structure and that nurturing, I think that for LaDonna, that was exactly 100% it. She was nurtured by her family and raised, just raised right, and raised in a really healthy environment, which she did have that privilege of being raised in a very healthy environment. So that led her, you know, to make all these these great strides for Comanche. Well, not just Comanches, but women, the environment. Now she's international, working with international indigenous groups to help them and form a collective, basically. So yeah, I think it all comes back to the family. I really do.
But another question right here.
Mm-hmm.
It was never mentioned what band or what family that she comes from, because she comes from the Caguetite family.
Right.
And in Comanche culture, that's a very strong, they have a very strong base in our society.
Right.
And I was wondering, is there going to, where because in her book she talks about it.
She does, yeah. And I come from the Masset Keys, and we're Quahada from the Quahada band.
Exactly.
And
It was never, but
right, we yeah.
why I talk about that is because there's so many of our younger Comanches that don't even understand. They don't even know what
Right,
they come from.
right. That's a good point. I would have loved to have included that in the film.
Y'all adopt people too, right? Johnny Depp. Hey, wait, let me introduce this guy real quick. This guy right here, everybody turn around there real quick, because he's going to say something real funny. This is Corey Northern. We went to school at OU together, and he starred in all of my films before they got successful. So literally every film that I made up to the point where the film went to Sundance and someone in the world saw it, he was the star of. I don't know what that says, but shut the Yeah. Yeah. You're late. You missed the whole time.
You missed your cue, young man.
Oh, yeah. You shouldn't have been at the bar that I just left you at. You would have made it. He's really upset because we were watching the World Cup together, and I told him the story about how I was in Greece one time, and England was playing Greece, and everywhere I would go, there were all these sunburnt Englishmen singing really loud, drunken songs at every place that I ever went. And I called them lobsters, and he's mad about that. So, moving on, Brian.
Question right here.
For Mr. Studi, I was kind of wondering if you had grown up in a traditional environment, since you play so many traditional roles, and if that's something that comes natural to you, or if that's something that you look at.
I grew up in a traditionally untraditional family. And by that I mean that we weren't Christians and we weren't totally traditional. My family, they went to either one. They'd go to the churches or they'd go to the grounds.
They were from Oklahoma.
Yeah, yeah.
They'd go to either one, but mainly we were kind of outlaws. Our whole family was kind of outlaws. As a matter of fact, we have one. We actually have two people from my mother's side of the family who had the Supreme Court overrule Judge Parker in Arkansas because he was trying to hang, I would have been my great grandfather and his brother for murder, but the Supreme Court ruled that Parker couldn't hang him because the crime happened in Indian Territory in Cherokee Nation. So that's the kind of family I have. So I have much more to draw from than just traditional or untraditionally progressive. Yep.
Okay, one more question, and we got to clear the theater for Sterlin's movie.
Northeastern Oklahoma, between Tahlequah and Stillwell, an area I call No Fire Hollow. It's near Rocky Mountain. No one knows where that is. I want applause here.
I do.
Well, thank you all for coming, and please talk to our guests throughout this weekend. Thank you.